Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Oh, they're red, white, and blue. But when the band plays Hail to the Chief, Lord, they point the cannon at you. It ain't me, it ain't me, I ain't no sinner, I know. It ain't me, it ain't me, I ain't no fortunate one. Some folks are born silver spoon in ass. Lord, don't they help themselves, yeah. But when the tax man comes to the door, Lord, the house looking like a rummage sale, yeah. It ain't me, it ain't me, I ain't no millionaire, I know. It ain't me, it ain't me, I ain't no fortunate one, hell no. Some folks inherit star-spangled eyes. Oh, they send you to war, Lord. But when you ask them, how much should we give? Oh, they only answer, more, 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 more. It ain't me, it ain't me, I ain't no military son, no. It ain't me, it ain't me, I ain't no fortunate one. It ain't me, it ain't me, I ain't no Brian Thompson, fuck no. It ain't me, it ain't me, I suffer from compassion, it's the worst. And that brings us to today's sponsor, Psychopathinol. Does your basic humanity keep getting in the way of you getting ahead in life? Are things like integrity and empathy, inconveniences and obstacles to your progress in the system, preventing you from clawing your way to the top and climbing over the backs of others to get ahead in the rat race? You're not alone. As far back as the 15th century, Machiavelli was writing about this very conundrum. I mean, let's face it. Dominance games and avarice are the way of the world. And if you want to attain status and power in society, you're going to have to be complicit in some nefarious deeds. Why let something as frivolous as personal ethics impede your rising star? I mean, the ends justify the means, don't they? And those means justify the means to them, and the means to those means, and it gets a little recursive at this point. But the reality is that if you're too scrupulous and pure for the methodologies of this world, then some other rat in the race will happily take your place and scramble over the top of you to pull your strings. If you're going to play the game at all, you may as well do it right. But you know what's not going to serve you in this? A conscience. Now, in Machiavelli's day, it took arduous and painstaking work for a person to desensitize themselves to the suffering of others and the legitimacy of their perspectives as conscious, feeling beings. But who has the time and energy for all of that with the breakneck pace of the modern world? But never fear, Psychopathinol is here. Now you too can be just as unfeeling and ruthless as the billionaire oligarchs who live the lifestyle you've always dreamed of. And unlike in the olden days, there's no need to go through all the trauma and sleepless nights involved in gradually developing your callous indifference to evil from scratch. With Psychopathinol, a single tablet daily is enough to render you totally immune from any form of qualm or compunction that might otherwise arise as you glad hand, schmooze, and backstab your way to the top. Whomever you may have to throw under the bus, you can rest assured that you'll sleep like a baby afterward. Naturally, Psychopathinol has earned a litany of celebrity endorsements, and so I'll only mention a few. Of course, it's ever popular with the financial criminal class, be it Bernie Madoff, Larry the Fink, Peter Thiel, George Soros, Mark Andreessen, or Steve Mnuchin, whom I call Butt Manooch, which is a story for another day. And yet Butt Manooch is a perfect example of a robo-signing villain who profiteered from unethical practices which helped to bring the financial system to its knees, and incidentally wrought devastating consequences upon the lives of hundreds of millions of people who had nothing to do with any of it, wriggling out of all personal accountability for the fallout, and not only that, but who then also went on to become the Secretary of the Treasury, whereupon he got on television to denounce the evils of Bitcoin because of its capacity for anonymized transactions through the use of coin tumblers. All completely and utterly unironically, I might add. I mean, considering his deep ties with Wall Street, it's understandable that he would want to oppose a limited, decentralized currency which the government and central banking system can't control, and thus effectively gives people back real individual ownership of their wealth. The financial liberation implicit in this clearly went against his own interests and those of his entire class. But of course he couldn't frame it in this way, not publicly. This financial criminal had to sell his objections as being ethical in nature. Because it's possible to buy drugs with Bitcoin. And as if posturing around the morality of Bitcoin after having helped to precipitate the biggest economic collapse of most of our lifetimes at that point through dishonest dealings weren't enough, you have to realize that as Treasury Secretary, he was the representative of a fiat currency whose value is based in mass murder and stolen oil. Clearly the ethical alternative in this situation, right? But roll the footage and look into his blank eyes. There's no shame there. He doesn't betray any trace of recognition of the fundamental absurdity of what he's saying or give any indication of cognitive dissonance at all. That's the power of Psychopathinol. How do you think Nancy Pelosi had the gall to engage in insider trading with pharmaceutical stocks while at the same time making policy decisions that were disastrous for the American people on the basis of pseudoscience and misinformation, all to ensure the future of her and her husband's portfolio? It's not brass balls. It's Psychopathinol. Of course, from there, it's a natural step to think about Tony Fauci. While spinning lies to protect his own ass, lies which, again, harmed the lives of hundreds of millions of people, I might add, he actually made the claim, "I am science." Naturally, he didn't even need to say so explicitly to have the effect of discrediting science itself by association, because of course this ethos subtextually underlay all of his arbitrary and imperious bullshit from the get-go. But let's remember the point here. He tanked the reputation of the empirical quest for understanding itself just to save his own skin, and he did so without so much as batting an eye. Thanks, Psychopathinol. And by free association, we've built our way up to Psychopathinol's best customer ever, Bill Gates. Here's a guy who had the audacity to point to debunked lies around COVID and the vaccine as a pretext for pushing AI-based censorship online. And this was at a stage when the public was finally waking up to the fact that the human censorship we'd all collectively encountered over this very issue had in reality silenced a lot of true information and propagated outright lies. Yeah, we're all just champing at the bit to jump on the censorship bandwagon again with the very guy who pushed many of these self-same lies. The same guy, mind, who was uniquely positioned to profiteer from pushing the vaccine on the public to the tune of billions, and who had staged a dress rehearsal for the whole pandemic event just 2 months before this pathogen was leaked into the public. But we're obviously going to go along with him because he brings up the same debunked narrative again. And I mean, how evil could he be when he dresses like Mr. Rogers? And it's AI this time. I mean, aren't things always new and shiny and original again when you have a flashy new technology to associate it with? And yeah, admittedly, this example demonstrates the limits of the capabilities of Psychopathinol. And if you go back and watch this interview, even Gates can't stifle a bit of a satirical laugh at the ludicrous levels of irony involved. Yet this was only a small break in the facade. And let me remind you that this is the guy pushing petroleum-based fertilizers and GMO crops on farmers in Africa as though it were a solution to the malnutrition epidemic. Of course, it's only an ancillary benefit that they're then dependent upon buying his patented seeds every growing season forever thereafter. And he frames it as a humanitarian undertaking. The guy who tests his experimental vaccines on some of the poorest, most vulnerable populations in Africa and the Indian subcontinent, and admits that he's made vastly greater returns from vaccines than he ever did in software, where, remember, at that time, he was seen as a cutthroat monopolist. Those were the days before Psychopathinol, of course. And yet, with all of that, he still manages to position himself in the public eye as a philanthropist do-gooder. Take that, logic! And through the course of all of that other stuff, he never broke his poker face once, did he? Psychopathinol. And what about Antony Blinken? How do you think he was able to lie to Congress so swimmingly about the siege of Gaza and the IDF's obvious and deliberate targeting of humanitarian aid workers? I mean, it's public record that the reports detailing these crimes against humanity were sitting on the secretary's desk when he dissembled about the progress made on Israel's blockade as a thin pretext for advocating for more arming of genocide and the facilitation of further war crimes. Although progress toward allowing in basic food and medical provisions, whatever the fuck that means, isn't sufficient to make such armament permissible, even by U.S. laws. But do you think Blinken is racked with guilt over having participated in the forced starvation of Gazans, including over 1 million children and teens? LMAO, says Psychopathinol. Of course, we could go on to talk about Klaus Schwab, Victoria Nuland, Dick Cheney. The list is endless. But all of our examples thus far have been dredged up from the past. How about something more topical today? How about something with a little bit of currency? Well, take Marco Rubio, for instance. Do you think little Marco misses a wink of sleep after sending his masked banditos out on their illegal renditions to terrorize, abduct, and disappear people off the streets for the crime of speaking their conscience and standing up for the equal application of basic human rights to Palestinians as to Israelis or Ukrainians or any white group? Absolutely not. And you shouldn't worry about Rubio's conscience, because the Israelis bombed that one too. In any case, it has to be noted that the Muslims, and Palestinians in particular, who get targeted for jailing without charge, without having done anything to harm anyone, in fact, are Semites by definition, and yet what does Rubio say is the reason for these detentions? Fighting anti-Semitism. Yes, one always persecutes Semitic people in order to combat anti-Semitism, doesn't one? It makes perfect sense. Actually, the recent Jewish protesters in Jerusalem, whose voices the Israeli government violently squelched, had it right. Zionism is the leading cause of anti-Semitism. And so as long as we're locking up Semites in the name of fighting anti-Semitism, I have a suggestion for little Marco which might actually be more logically coherent. But of course, coherence is a moot point. Because, thanks to Psychopathinol, Rubio is unfazed by the absurdities and contradictions inherent in this or any stance. Such considerations don't even enter into his empty little head to disturb the tranquility of feeling that he holds all the cards. And if he didn't have this blinkering confidence that his power and authority are paramount and could never be upended, how could he then justify sending people not convicted of any crime anywhere to black site prisons? Which, supposedly, they're expanding the franchise to Libya now. So look forward to that grand opening. I mean, a normal person would be afraid that once the American people had had enough of this fascistic terrorism, that they might turn on him and send his own ass packing to CCOT. But not Rubio. In fact, pernicious denial of reality is one of the potential side effects of Psychopathinol. And we all know that the buck doesn't stop with the Secretary of State. Even our beloved Emperor Trump would be lost without a little help from Psychopathinol. Of course, he's lost with it too, but I did just mention the denial of reality thing. I mean, gaslighting the American people isn't something that comes naturally to most of us. And yet here's a man born with a silver spoon up his ass. I mean, bungling people's French fry orders at McDonald's is as close as he's ever come to doing an honest day's work in his life. And yet somehow, this guy convinced people that he's a populist. And you go, a ruling class populist? Surely not. That's beyond the pale. Nobody would fall for that. You would think, right? But that part isn't even anything new. If you doubt it, you should look into the most popular American president ever, FDR. Of course, the novelty with Trump is that the disingenuousness of this claim is off the scale. Kind of like the America First thing. I mean, what have we seen? An administration running America into the ground in order to bend over backward playing lackey for the Greater Israel Project. And this brings us, finally, to Netanyahu. I know some of you were thinking, how can you mention all of these people and omit the literal Hitler of our time? Well, the truth is, Bibi is not a Psychopathinol customer. Sorry to burst your bubble. He's just an actual psychopath. What can I say? It happens sometimes. Even Psychopathinol can't hold a candle to having been naturally born without a soul. But for the rest of us, it's a super convenient way to block out those pesky, disadvantageous impulses. Psychopathinol is not a traditional sleep aid, and it is habit-forming. If you have concerns over the fate of your immortal soul, you should consult a priest or cleric before starting to take Psychopathinol. Of course, other harmful side effects are possible, but the team at Psychopathinol really didn't give enough of a shit to tell you about them. That's how effective it is. So make sure to order Psychopathinol today and be scruple-free tomorrow. Call now at 1-800-382-5968. That's 1-800-FUCK-YOU.
It ain't me. It ain't me. I ain't no senator, son, no. It ain't me. It ain't me. I ain't no fortunate one. Some folks are born silver spooning ass. Lord, don't they help themselves, yeah. But when the tax man comes to the door, Lord, the house is looking like